The other debate between Sinner and Alcaraz, they shouldn't earn the same. Several former tennis players have sparked a debate about the fact that both earn the same for going to tournaments. The discussion over who should earn more on the tour has resurfaced, and this time with two undisputed protagonists of the present and future of tennis, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. Several former American players, John Isner, Sam Querrey, Jack Sock, and Steve Johnson, addressed the issue of the fees both receive for participating in certain tournaments on their podcast, using what happened at the 2026 ATP Doha as an example. In Qatar, both Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner reportedly received around $1.2 million just for participating, a usual figure when it comes to attracting the tour's biggest stars. However, for some, that economic equality does not fully reflect the real impact of each player off the court. They are getting the same. Carlos should receive a little more, Querrey said. An opinion partially backed by Sock, who pointed out that the Spaniard offers more show and sells more tickets. And that's where the debate arises. Should the showman factor decisively influence appearance contracts? Because if something has characterized Alcaraz since his breakthrough, it is his ability to turn every match into an event. His variety of shots, impossible drop shots, running passing shots, or points won from improbable positions generate a constant collection of highlights that boost viewership and fuel social media. He is a magnetic profile for the neutral spectator. Sinner, on the other hand, represents a more sober excellence, more surgical. His consistency from the baseline and his competitive coolness have allowed him to consolidate at the top of the ranking and challenge the Spaniard for the throne. Sportingly, the quality is absolute. Commercially, the debate is open. In a tour where revenues increasingly depend on global impact, the discussion is not minor. Tournaments don't just pay for points or potential titles, but for ticket sales, audience, and international visibility. And that's where charisma comes into play. For now, both continue to move in similar figures in terms of appearance fees. But the question is already on the table: should tennis reward only performance? Or also the spectacle? The Alcaraz-Sinner duel transcends the court and is now also fought in the offices. Jannik Sinner explained his biggest crisis in the world of tennis. Jannik Sinner bowed out early from his bid at the ATP 500 in Doha. Could Mensik beat him? Yes. But it is still one of the biggest surprises of the tournament. The Italian acknowledged his rival's high level of serving, admitted to specific mistakes at key moments, and conceded that he was not entirely sharp in certain decisions, although he made it clear that he is not worried about his current level. I made a couple too many mistakes, but that can happen. I'm a bit upset about how I managed some moments, although it's something that can occur. Every player faces ups and downs. I've had 2 incredible years and now I'm in a small dip, but it's not something that worries me. I know I can play better tennis. In our job we all have ups and downs. With this defeat for Sinner, the ATP 500 Doha trophy seems set up for Carlos Alcaraz, who now has the chance to win another title and extend his reign at the top of the rankings. The gap between the Spaniard and the Italian is 2,850 points, which could widen to 3,150 if the world number 1 maintains his run in Qatar. What's coming in the short term? I know how to come back. I'm very calm. I'm sure the work will pay off, the results will come. Maybe not in Indian Wells or in Miami, but the work will pay off. Nothing's wrong. In the medium term? We are working on the physical side. Now we have 2 weeks in which we can train well and refuel for the upcoming tournaments. I'm trying to find a good balance since in Australia I was a bit flat. In this match I tried to push a bit more, but here too I have to find the balance. And in the long term? One of my big goals will be Roland Garros, but that goal is still far away. We've seen that all players have suffered throughout their careers, although I wouldn't call this suffering yet. I've simply lost a couple of matches. I also have to remember what I've done in the last 3 years, in which I've won a huge number of matches and lost very few. The confidence to play good tennis is there. An Italian tennis legend such as Adriano Panatta has called for respect for Jannik Sinner following the large number of criticisms he has been receiving due to his defeat to Djokovic in Australia and, above all, against Mensik in Doha. The former player pointed to Spain as one of the main sources of criticism toward the current world number 2 in the ATP rankings. Known for always expressing his opinion very vehemently, the Italian legend Adriano Panatta spoke about the current form of Jannik Sinner. Accustomed to excellence in his game, the current world number 2 fell to Novak Djokovic in the semi-finals of the 2026 Australian Open after having conquered the Oceanic Grand Slam twice in a row. However, what really set off alarm bells was the defeat to Jakub Mensik in the quarterfinals of the ATP 500 in Doha. For Panatta, that crisis does not exist. It's logical that they're writing this now and they would be happy if it were true, but I'm sorry to contradict them. Jannik is not in crisis at all, Panatta began. referring to criticism coming from Spain in remarks to La Nuova D's and statements reported by Corriere dello Sport. In conclusion, Panatta is clear that the criticism of Jannik Sinner for his last 2 defeats is unjustified. Someone like Sinner, who is world number 1, who has won everything in his career and was almost unbeatable, cannot be criticized like this for 2 losses, the former Italian player said about the run of results of the Fox. Stan Wawrinka explains why Carlos Alcaraz and Sinner are better than Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, and Djokovic. The Swiss legend believes that new generations are always going to be better than the previous ones since the evolution of the game is evident. After debuting with a victory in the first round of the ATP in Dubai against Benjamin Hassan, 7-5, 6-3, Stan Wawrinka gave an interview to journalist Rima Bulal in which, among other aspects, he explained why Alcaraz and Sinner are better than Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic. I think the evolution of the game is evident right now. The level is really high, that's for sure. New generations are always going to be better than the previous ones, and we can see it, the Swiss began. For the 3-time Grand Slam champion, the conditions of tennis are increasingly different. The conditions have also changed a bit, with the balls and tournaments a little slower, so the style of play is somewhat different. And if you look at Jannik's and Carlos's current level, it's incredibly high, extremely high. And you still have Novak competing with them, he pointed out. In fact, Wawrinka, who is living his final season as a professional, has one last wish before hanging up his racket, to face Alcaraz. I've had the opportunity to play against Jannik many times, the last matches were really tough. And I hope I can play against Carlos at least once before I retire, he concluded. Second tournament of the year and second title for Carlos Alcaraz. The player from Murcia added the Doha tournament to his resume after defeating the Frenchman Arthur Fils in the final, a victory that also allows him to add 500 valuable points to strengthen his world number 1 ranking. The recent Australian Open champion will total 13,550 points this Monday, with a wide lead over his closest, and in fact only, pursuer, Jannik Sinner, who after falling in the quarterfinals to Jakub Mensik remains on 10,350. Thus, the Spaniard's advantage is 3,200 points, a margin that guarantees him the top spot in the rankings for at least 66 weeks, the same number of weeks Sinner has spent in that position. And that despite the fact that the Italian will add points in every tournament he plays until the Masters 1000 in Rome because last season he could not compete during that period due to a doping suspension. In any case, even if the Italian accumulates the maximum points until then, he will not be able to catch the Spaniard at least until the start of the clay court season. That is, even if Alcaraz falters in the upcoming tournaments, he will remain at the top at least until the end of the Monte Carlo Masters 1000, which ends on Sunday, April 12, and where the Spaniard defends 1,000 points as the reigning champion. After a week's break, Alcaraz and Sinner will experience, from March 4 to 15, a new chapter in their particular battle for the throne of world tennis. It will be at Indian Wells, where the player from Murcia defends the 400 points corresponding to last year's semi-finals, when he fell surprisingly to the eventual champion, Jack Draper. For his part, as already mentioned, Sinner does not defend points until May due to the doping suspension that kept him off the courts for 3 months, therefore he will surely add points at the end of March at the Miami Masters 1000, where Alcaraz defends only the 10 points from the second round reached last year, when he was surprisingly defeated by the Belgian David Goffin. After Alcaraz and Sinner everything remains the same, with Djokovic, 5,280 points, in third position, Alexander Zverev, 4,555, in fourth and Lorenzo Musetti, 4,405, in fifth. The only change in the top 10 is the rise of Taylor Fritz to 7th place at the expense of Felix Auger alias Syme, who drops to 8th. Arthur Fils, for his part, climbs from 40th to 33rd place thanks to the final reached in Doha. Jannik Sinner spoke about last year's doping suspension scandal before his debut at the Australian Open. The Italian Jannik Sinner, the defending champion, said that the 3-month suspension strengthened him and that he arrives in Melbourne more relaxed. The break and the response. In 2024 Sinner was suspended for 3 months after 2 positive tests for an anabolic steroid. The tennis player explained that the substance allegedly entered his system involuntarily during a massage. A physiotherapist applied a spray to treat a cut. That episode forced him to pause his schedule and put him under intense media pressure. The World Anti-Doping Agency concluded that there was no intention to cheat, but held Sinner responsible for the actions of his team and imposed the sanction. About that moment, the player himself admitted, "It was difficult for me, but also for my family," a phrase that summed up the personal toll he experienced. The suspension expired in May and Jannik Sinner returned to competition with outstanding results. He was crowned at Wimbledon and at the ATP Finals, which allowed him to close the season as world number 2, behind the Spaniard Carlos Alcaraz. That resurgence confirmed his return to the forefront and eased part of the accumulated pressure. Looking ahead to Melbourne. On his evolution, Sinner stated, "The person I've become is much more mature in a way, because I see things differently when they don't go in the right direction. What happens on the court, in terms of results, is a bonus." He said that he now approaches the sport with a different mindset and maximum commitment. The Italian added, "Now I live the sport in a very different way, more relaxed, but I give everything I have." In his team, coach Darren Cahill has returned, a key figure in his development. About Cahill, Sinner said, "He's the man who has everything under control. He's like the father of the whole team." In the last edition, Sinner defeated Alexander Zverev in straight sets, and in 2024 he won a final against Daniil Medvedev. If he were to achieve a third consecutive Australian Open, he would join Novak Djokovic among the few to reach that mark in the Open era. He now debuts against the Frenchman Hugo Gaston, 94th in the rankings. As new advances emerge, the debate over the usefulness of anti-doping systems intensifies. The system is reactive. It waits. It discovers. It bans. But it often arrives late.